be much more likely to bring back vehicles to their franchise dealer. So while you may see the car less frequently, I believe the lifetime value of service per car could be much higher for our franchise dealers. And then finally, let's talk about connected cars. One of the areas that's most interesting to me. We've seen a lot of backlash in the press recently. This was an article a few months ago, BMW in South Korea, giving consumers options around, hey, do you pay for the rear heated seats up front in one lump payment, or do you want to pay as you go per month? And consumers just really dislike this, right? They dislike the fact that you're going to build features in the car that you might not activate at the time of purchase and allow me to pay for by the month afterwards. And my answer is, we condition a younger generation of consumers to pay for almost everything in their life by the month. I live in Atlanta. I'd love to only pay for my heated seats for the 4 months of the year that I need them and not have to pay for the cold weather package up front. But I know this is a huge point of friction. There'll be conversations here as well. The big conversation I think is around how 6 months after I buy a car, I elect to unlock a feature. Extra horsepower, driver assistance, enhanced data into my car. Will the dealer that sold the consumer the car even be made aware that the consumer has unlocked that feature? Never mind, will there be revenue share from the OEM back to the dealer? The OEM may argue, listen, we built the car, we paid for the software developers, we innovated the actual features, and then we solicited the consumer through the dash that a new feature was enabled. They pushed a button, they swiped their credit card, and they paid. But I know right now, against preaching to the choir, many dealer councils are pre-negotiating what that revenue share is into the future, anticipating that if the OEMs do accomplish what they've said they're going to be able to do and generate tens of billions of dollars of new high-margin revenue, this could be a windfall to franchise dealers. We may literally find a future here in the near future where you get a dividend check every month. You don't even know features were activated, and you're getting a dividend check from the OEM. Where's this revenue coming from? How do I tie that back to features that were unlocked in my CRM? Big data problems, but I think this could be a great windfall for dealers going forward, but also fraught with anxiety. And then finally, and relatedly, is over-the-air updates. So the cars are getting more sophisticated, and the intention is for OEMs to be able to push software updates directly to the consumer's car via Wi-Fi overnight while they're sleeping. And this has big implications, right? So if this is successful, the OEMs are anticipating billions and billions of dollars of cost avoidance by avoiding recalls and warranty work that would have otherwise come back to a franchise dealer, where like Tesla, they'll be able to push software updates to a consumer's vehicle and avoid the dealership at all. So I think the interesting dynamic that has yet to play out, and we'll see how that affects dealers' fixed operations. Last slide. So the other thing that we're seeing, interestingly enough, and I think it is overdue in some ways, but are some of the legacy OEMs taking this opportunity with electrification to shrink their physical dealer footprint. We saw this with Cadillac 2 years ago. Cadillac said, hey, dealers, we want you to make a $200,000 facility upgrade, installing fast chargers. For those dealers that did not want to opt in, they were bought out. They were able to stroke a check and buy and shrink the footprint. I believe the Cadillac dealerships has gone down from just under 1,000 in the US to about 550 at this point. So very successful, weeding out the smaller, weaker Cadillac dealerships. Buick has said that they are willing to buy back any of the 2,000 franchisees that want to surrender their franchise. I understand more than 90% of these are co-located with a GMC brand. Probably many of you in the audience here know more about this than I do. I have not seen anything yet in terms of how successful they have been. But Buick is a brand that typically appeals to an older audience, and they're anticipating moving very quickly to an all-EV lineup. And I think that there probably will be many dealers that opt out and just surrender their brand because the volume sold per franchisee is very, very low. So, as I wrap here, we bring our panelists on stage, and at the risk of offending everybody in this room, I see one of the beautiful, resilient things about running a franchise dealership is the fact that it's not dissimilar from squeezing a water-filled balloon. If you've ever done that before, you push on one side, the other side pops out, etc. So bear with me. So this is what I mean. if you look at a bird's eye view of a dealership, what's happened over the last 20, 25 years since the internet? So back in the day when consumers had no transparency whatsoever, it was unheard of that dealers would make $10,000 on a trade. Consumers had no way to get, what's my trade-in worth? Consumers did not have access to invoice price. Before 20 years ago, Edmunds started to publish invoice price. They had no idea what you paid for that new vehicle. And so the lack of transparency pre-internet meant dealers were able to focus on the two profit centers on the left, new cars and used cars, and squeeze out a lot of profit. Well, what happened when transparency came along, started to squeeze new car profits, and what we saw over the last 20 years is F&I attach rates went up from like 20% to 50% plus, right? So we saw that pre-COVID, more than 50% of a dealer's profitability on average was from parts and service. So the business model is actually quite elegant. It's complex. You guys are operating very, very complex businesses that's underappreciated by the OEMs, I believe. But at the same time, you have this unique opportunity to reallocate people, capital, and resources from department to department. So as different areas of the business model become under attack, you can reallocate, and it's still a very, very profitable, nice, healthy business overall. And I think this resilient business model will continue to survive in the future, despite the fact that where you get revenue from, and more importantly, where you drive profitability from, is going to change potentially very significantly. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists on stage. So if you would give them a round of applause while I call them up. Let's first have Liza Borges, the CEO of Carter Myers Automotive. Dinos Constantine, COO of Pollard Classic Automotive Group. Bill Feinstein, not even in a super suit, the president of Planet Honda. And last but definitely not least, Michael Dunlap, VP and partner from Shop Automotive Group. So, ground rules here, that is my cell phone number. Please don't text me at like 3 a.m. Sunday morning out here. But that's my cell phone number. I'm going to do my best to triage questions. We've got open mics here as well. So if you'd like to, feel free to step up if you're a brave soul. But you can, my phone number is up there. Text me questions as they arise. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that and triage. If for some reason I'm not getting to your question, feel free to grab a mic. All right, welcome panelists. How you guys doing? Great. It's great the first day of NAD because everyone's alert, wide-eyed, and we're not in Vegas this week, so it won't take our toll on us physically. So for those audience members who don't know each of you, Eliza, maybe I'll start with you. Would each of you please provide a little bit of background on yourself, who you work for, your current role, and maybe a little bit of context around how you originally got into the business?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. I'm Liza Borges, and I'm president and CEO of Carter Myers Automotive. We're located in Virginia, West Virginia, and soon to be Maryland. We have 18 franchises, 23 dealerships, and I am honored and privileged to be the fourth generation of my family to lead our organization.
Dinos Constantine, COO of the Pollard Classic Automotive Group in Orlando, Florida. We have 8 franchises in 9 locations throughout Central Florida. I got into the business in the 1990s, the customer management area, the CRM area, and eventually worked my way into the retail side of the equation.
Great, thank you.
Bill Feinstein, I'm the dealer principal of Planet Honda in New Hampshire, as well as multi-store general manager for 3 stores for Lithia Motors. We sold our store in New Jersey to Lithia about 1.5 years ago. And like probably some of you in this audience, I married into the car business about 20-something years ago, and been involved ever since. Originally trained as an attorney and banker.
And I'm Michael Dunlap. I'm with the Shop Automotive Group. I'm a vice president and partner in 9 of our 12 stores. We operate across Colorado, Utah, and California. We opened our second in California this summer. And I started on the OEM side. I spent 8.5 years with the BMW Group, both within Rolls-Royce and within the BMW divisions, mostly in sales and marketing.
Great, thank you, Michael. This is a jump ball. Any of you can grab this ball. So we're back at NADA. We're in Dallas. What's made you most excited this year to be here?
I'll jump off the ledge. I would say last year at NADA, it didn't feel quite like a full show yet. This certainly feels like a full show. It feels like 2023 is a full audience, whereas 2022, and obviously we miss a lot of people in 21, but it feels like it's a full show. It feels like everybody's here, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of folks. Yeah.
I think what I'm most excited about is the last couple of years, I came with a plan more to spend time with vendors, spend time in the expo hall and in the workshops. But this year we're at an evolution moment where we have a combination of sometimes needing to focus on getting back to the basics, while at the same time being more innovative as to what our next 3 to 5 years are going to look like. We all know that inventory is coming back, interest rates are going up, all these things are happening right now, so it is the perfect time for all of us to be together here in Dallas and really talking about collaborative solutions on how we're going to adjust to all of these changes that we know are happening in 2023. So I think the conversations are more important to me this year than maybe the numbers.
I agree with Ryder as well. I think it's going to be back to basics for a lot of us. I think the last couple of years were a little bit out of the box. Looking forward to seeing how business models are going to evolve a little bit and tools that we can help drive our business and efficiency going forward.
I think the last 2 years have certainly been great for the industry. And I think it's a good focal point to get back and start doing the basics and looking at what's going to get us where we need to go in the next few years. Certainly isn't what got us here today. And it's also nice to know that I'm not the only paranoid person starting to see monsters under the bed and lots of concern out there.
Right. So fast forward to Sunday or whenever it is you're getting out of town here. If there was one thing that you would accomplish, what do you hope to accomplish at the show this year?
If I didn't sign a single contract, it would have been a great show.
So I think Bill actually makes a great point. One of the things that we prepared our team for in coming in was our goal is not to run after the shiny new objects, because one of the best things about NADA is all of the new technologies we get to learn about. But we actually took a step back and said, I want to leave here having spent time with our vendor partners, actually looking how we can go deeper in those relationships, how we can evaluate what problem each of our vendor partners are helping us solve, what does success look like, how are we going to measure that going forward, and making sure that we have deeper partnerships and not just vendors for 2023, because we need them.
I think Leslie's spot on. I think we spend too much time chasing that shiny new object as opposed to looking at our current vendors and are we getting the most out of that relationship? And chances are we're not using the tool exactly as it was envisioned. We're not taking the most advantage of it. And I think finding out best practices, figuring out with our partners how we can use what we have today. And maybe it's an enhancement, maybe it's doing something differently as opposed to just signing up a new product.
Along the same lines, it's not only our existing vendors out there, but how do our vendors play nice with one another? A lot of us have invested a lot of tools that we ask ourselves, well, X occurs over here, Y occurs over here. If I could just bring these two together, I can drive the productivity of our people and drive better results across the business.
I think we've got to look for ways to simplify the execution of different functions in our business, and software is going to be a piece of that. Tools are going to be a piece of that. But I'd love to leave here with less vendors, frankly. And if we can find vendors or go deeper with the partnerships that we have, so we can execute the functions with fewer tools. I think a lot of our people have what I'll call dashboarditis. They've got this tool for this thing, and this tool for that thing, and this one doesn't. So if we can leave here and find ways to execute it with fewer tools and make the job easier for our people, that would be a success.
Great. So before we circle back to some of these things, these are all juicy topics. Let's stay with vendors. So a lot of these dealers are going to walk into that vendor hall, and to me, it was always a little overwhelming. Like, I don't know how you come to a show like this and possibly see all the folks that you're supposed to see. Over the years, have you developed any best practices about the way to navigate around the vendor hall, or is it too late now? You should have done your homework ahead of time.
Well, I know that one of my goals always is to have planned meetings with typically our current vendor partners. And if there are 2 or 3 that we know that we are interested in, set those meetings in advance, because you can just wander and end up going down a rabbit hole that is not the best use of your time. And while we're here for 4 days, it flies by. So I don't know. I think if you didn't come in with a plan, you might be a lost cause already. It is overwhelming, Steve.
Yeah, Friday and Saturday is very packed right now with vendor meetings out there, but Sunday's the day I always enjoy, or can spend the showroom floor, or where a lot of vendors have let their guard down. You can actually spend some time talking to them and learning about some of the new up-and-coming companies out there, things that you've never thought about before. Sunday is just a wonderful day to spend on the floor.
I think by Sunday they're exhausted. And so the sales pitch is worn down a little bit, and you can get a little more honesty and integrity about real conversations. But I also think it's worthwhile to listen to the buzz around you. You know, what's the 1 or 2 vendors? It's on everyone's lips. You have to see that vendor. Maybe it wasn't on your plan, but go check it out.
We've made a point of sort of revisiting with vendors, you know, in subsequent years. You know, we selected a CRM. I'll leave the name out of it for now. But I remember looking at them in 2018 and saying, you know, they're really doing some fascinating things, but I don't think it's quite there yet. And then we came back and looked at it in 2019 and brought, you know, some of our GMs and partners with us. And then ultimately the third year we sort of pulled the trigger. So I like seeing the evolution of some of these, you know, sort of earlier stage vendors that see how they evolve and address the market and adapt, you know, to feedback as they, you know, go through customer acquisition on their side. So there are a few meetings there that we have scheduled over the next couple of days to look at things we've already looked at, but have, you know, they've morphed, they've transformed over the past couple of years, and they've got a better tool than maybe when they started.
I think the other thing is also, we all look at the tool and it's great, it's wonderful, but you really have to take a good look at the support and the capabilities, right? Do they have the capacity to onboard? Do they have the capacity to support you? Because it could be a wonderful product. But if everyone's signing up for it today, can they onboard 500 dealers this year? And is that growth going to take so much out of the customer service? And is that also going to impact your ability to actually use the tool properly?
Bill, there's one other important point to that, I think, too, is who within our own company is going to own it, be the champion of it, make sure that when we sign up for it, is successful. If we don't have the capacity to all relationship, then we better hold off and come back in a year or 2. Maybe we're ready for that conversation.
I've made the mistake of falling in love with something here in the past and you know, shook hands or made an agreement and gone home and said, you know, let me tell you about this great thing that we found. And they go, well, that's not going to work here, right? So I'm reluctant to sign agreements here, but bring it back and have our people really vet it and take a look at it. You know, they'll try to press you on the pricing over these next 4 days, but I promise you they will honor it for a while.
Yeah, an additional factor that we always look at when we're looking at new vendors is there's probably not a vendor that we're not going to see some value in when we visit them. But we always need to ask ourselves the question is, by placing this new process in place, you know, number one, are our people going to adopt it? But more importantly, you know, what do we potentially drop, you know, by implementing a new product? We've seen that happen all the time. And we end up harnessing this much value, but we end up losing this much value for overall across the organization. So critical analysis needs to be done on that.
Great. So maybe a leading question here, but you know, as you look at 2023 for your operations, what's your biggest initiative you'd like to accomplish this year from your operations?
Well, from our perspective, we want to more engage our customers. We want to get that accomplished through fixed operations. I think we know what's coming down the road. So the better job that we can do to engage our customer base, set them up for disappointment as they go elsewhere. It gives us really the opportunity to hold on to that customer longer term for whatever comes back to us. I think there's an enormous bull market in fixed operations between the number of ICE vehicles out there, the complexity of the vehicles, and with EVs coming, we need to build backwards and really start capturing that service customer base. And I think most of us only see about 35% of the addressable market. Absolutely enormous opportunity for everyone in this room.
I think for us, it's twofold. It's SG&A, right? How are we going to lead our operations? How are we going to become more efficient? How are we going to retain our people? How are we going to train our people? I think that you look back at 08, 09, and many of us got very lean and very efficient. I think there's no argument that we're all a little bloated right now, and we need to figure out how to thin the herd. I think we also have to figure out how do we take salespeople that used to sell 25 cars and now are selling 10 and making twice as much money. How do you adapt them back to a volume mindset? I think that's going to be a really big challenge. And I think for us, our continuous focus on employee engagement and keeping our employees focused on the mission and making them excited every day to come to work is really our biggest focus this year.
So my number one focus is very similar to Bill's, and it's about investing in our people. 3 specific things. First, we've got a lot of people who've joined our company in the last couple of years who have never experienced any other environment than what we've been in. So we've got to do a mindset shift and making sure we're looking at our production per associate. We've got to make sure that we've given them the proper training and skill support that they need on the showroom floor in particular, but also in our service department. Secondary investment is we put a lot of money into an apprentice technician program over the last 15 months. We're doubling that down this year. That's the second major investment. And then third area that we need to make more progress on is the attracting, recruiting, and retaining of a more diverse workforce in every department. You put up all those departments there earlier, and ours is very spotty. So those are our 3 major investment areas this year around our people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a number of those things that, I would say for us, it's about how we can do it with fewer people and fewer tools. Just simply put, fewer people and fewer tools. And where can we find value in automation? We've already touched on it. We can add tools, but if we don't get a sort of an optimum value out of automating processes, if we break things along the way and create other problems, we've got to find more value out of automation and find a way to do it with fewer people and fewer tools.
That's great. So let me ask the flip side of that. Maybe you've already answered, but what do you anticipate to be the biggest challenge this year?
I think the changing workforce. I mean, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of sort of employment migration, and we were the benefactor of that in some cases, and we lost out in some cases as well. I think that's settled a little bit over the past 6 months, but we really need to double down and invest in our people. And I think Liza is spot on. We have a lot of folks that don't have the sales skills that they might have had when they were really working for it. We've got a lot of order takers over the past 24 months is the simplest way to put it. So I think we've got to really double down and making sure that we're preparing those people for the environment that they're going to be in, instead of reacting to that.
I think it goes, well beyond sales too. And I was having breakfast a couple of weeks ago with the chief economist from one of the big investment banks, and we're talking about inflation and where it was heading. And his biggest concern continues to be wage inflation, and what's going to stop it. And his premise is really nothing, because the biggest issue is the character of the workforce has changed. People are not willing to work the hours or with the intensity that they used to work. And that's a huge problem we're all facing. Because if people are actually being 80% as productive as they used to be, what are we going to do? Because they expect 100% of the pay. And so how do we elevate them to understand that, that 80% is not good enough? We need you at 100%. Actually, we need you at 110. And I think that is really going to be a little bit of a generational issue and an education issue. And a lot of that's just going to be driven by culture.
I think one of our biggest challenges is we often are trying to solve problems that we've been experiencing the last couple of years. And what we need to be doing this year is actually solving problems for what is coming, and it's going to be very different than the last couple of years. So what I'm hearing, and I know we're probably going to talk about the agency model a little bit more, I think that both the OEMs, some of our vendor partners, and a lot of us are right now still trying to come up with solutions for how to improve the business we've had the last couple of years, and we almost have to put that up on a shelf and be able to attack what we're going to see from consumers walking in our showroom floor, from negative equity, higher interest rates, higher priced new vehicles, obviously people trying to make the decision around whether an EV is the right thing for their family. And we've got to do a complete mindset shift and start solving the problems of the future and not be looking backwards. So we've all got to shift now.
I think that's really well said. I'll add to that. I think that in the environment that we've been in, when we have needed to make critical changes as an industry, not necessarily as an individual dealer or dealer group, but when we needed to make sort of systemic changes, asking a dealer body to do that when they've made more money than they've ever made in their life is a tall ask. So we're behind, is the reality. We're behind.
Interesting.
It reminds me of, my favorite book, Andy Grove, Only the Paranoid Survive, right? And I really believe that's where we need to be right now. Because, I look at the auto industry very similar to the stock market, which is an efficient market, right? We went through this period where things were not efficient, right? It was a crazy boom, grosses went through the roof, our service departments were crazy busy, but everything has to find level. And I think as quickly as it went one way is as quickly as it's going to go the other way. And I don't think many of us are very prepared for it.
So let's dwell there for a minute, because Liza, what I heard from you is you use the word back to basics, getting people who are order takers and transitioning them to get ready for volume. But at the same time, then you're also anticipating all of these changes and getting prepared. And then dealers in general are in these. You and I've talked about this 30-day cycle where you're driving to hit sales targets every month. It's really hard to look at the horizon with these changes. How on earth, as leaders, do you thread those needles simultaneously?
Why we get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I think you have to have a long-term plan, right? So, when I first started doing the 5-year plans, I found it really, really difficult. But I found a huge amount of value in the 5-year plan because at least you're starting to think forward. It's not going to be correct, right? We can't predict everything, but at least it forces you to have the conversations with your people. What do our systems need to look like in 5 years? What does our people need to look like? And then you need the ability to pivot, right? And then you make it more granular. Like when we start having annual plans, it gets a little more granular. And then even recently, we've been updating the quarterly plans because things have been changing every 90 days. Where you used to be able to look at a year and have a pretty good idea, it's been 90-day cycles recently. But I think you still got to start with that long-term vision of where do you want to go, where do you think things are going, and then being able to adapt the plan.
I think that's really true on the facility side as well. I mean, we build buildings that have boxes for different things. And I think we have to really question the physical structure of what our facilities looks like as well, how they interact with one another. Are we designing an experience around a guest and ultimately designing the facility around the experience? I think that's going to change, and they're so capital intensive, as everybody here knows. It's going to take a lot of of a different future mindset of being willing to start with a blank sheet of paper, frankly.
And the OEMs aren't prepared for that. Right, on the one end, they're talking about, be prepared for, digital customers, be prepared for a very different model. But the facility requirements aren't meeting the future. There's a few OEMs out there, Honda, I have to say, being one of them, having done a couple of projects recently with them. You can start questioning, why are we separating this from that? And I go, okay, that makes sense. They sort of have concepts around, it needs to have this image, it needs to have this furniture. But as far as the layout, they're actually starting to listen, where some of the manufacturers, especially on the luxury side, they still have these tremendous mandates for these buildings that probably aren't going to be the right building 10 years ago.
Well, it's not only the building, it's also the footprint of the building. And we're working currently with an OEM right now, and they're operating in the world as if we're going to have 90 days worth of supply on the ground when I look at their parking requirements. But yet they're talking about going to a more build to order, just-in-time environment. And then we have a conflict between what they're saying and what they're requiring. And we're required to make these investments today, and the world may very much change on us in the next 3 to 5 years and not be aligned with that.
Well, and this isn't really answering your question, Steve, but it's an important one that we need to be talking about in this room. And when we're talking about our facilities, the responsibility is on us because we can't change the OEM requirements, but what we can do is make sure that we aren't just building a building to their requirements. So we recently hired someone outside of the industry to run our real estate company. And one of the purposes that we really wanted a different lens on it so that we weren't doing the same thing we've always done with our facilities. And we need to be challenging them in the right way. For example, in our service departments, when we're required to put in EV chargers every other day, We need to be learning how to put those on mobile units so we can be moving them around, to create more flexibility in our shops. We need to make sure we're building to their requirements in the facility, but that we're doing it in a way that we know we can change it, because we're going to know that's what they do. But the onus is on us. They're not going to change the way they're doing their facilities, and I will give Honda credit. They are the ones who have said we need smaller showrooms and are giving us more flexibility in that regard.
Recently, we met with Audi just a few days ago looking at our new facility requirements for our existing location, plus in the point. And we were actually pleasantly surprised when they came back to it. Just a very flexible, modular approach, and so a lot of white light saw the same thing in Honda as well.
Great. So let's circle back to vendors for a minute, because something you said resonates with me. Help reconcile for me, you wanted to envision this blank sheet of paper. You could architect the ideal consumer experience, but then I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you run headlong into what your vendors can help facilitate. So there's OEM requirements in some cases for specific vendors. You go out here and say, look, I want to architect a beautiful consumer experience that's beneficial for me and for them. Are you limited by the vendor selections on the market today? Open to anyone.
Yeah, I would say you are. There's, much like the disconnect between, the day supply and the facility that Tina was just mentioned. I think most manufacturers recognize that there's been a lot of consolidation in our industry, and there are a greater number of franchises owned by a fewer number of dealers, right? In the environment that I think that puts us in is if you have a fewer number of dealers representing more and more base or more and more brands, but each brand is operating independently with their requirements on the tools that you use or the digital retailing platform or the ways that you do this and you do that. I think that they're missing the opportunity to capture our scale. Does that make sense? Try to use the same tool across. We represent 11 different brands. It's really challenging to thread a needle with all the manufacturers to get that done. And what we're ultimately trying to do is create, a unique and consistent and very customer-oriented experience, in all sides of the business. But we're sort of getting, shot at in different directions.
Fragmentation, right? You have a dealer group with multiple franchises. You have one CRM in the store, a different website here, a different tool here. It's completely inefficient, right? You have to have an expert for each of those platforms, and the reality, the OEM should be agnostic, right? If we're the retailers and we're doing our job, we should go pick the tools that we think work best. Tell us so next. But as long as we're getting our metrics, we should have a choice on what platforms we're using. Unfortunately, I think we're heading into a period where we're going to have less and less choice, and it'll be more and more mandates by the OEMs. And I think some of the OEMs have done, okay, here's 4, right? Here's 5. I see a time in the interview with me, here's 2, and then a time, here's 1. And it's not.
We already see the happen across all of our brands right now, and I think it's a pivotal issue for every dealer group. Every dealership that work with their state association start discussing what are the parameters, what are the rules of engagement, because this issue limited choice across brands. For the first time ever, we saw one of our OEMs right now actually put a list of DMS providers that are acceptable. We had never seen that before until a week ago.
And also, it is any kind of innovation, right? Because then you have these legacy programs, and they end up getting bought out by one of the big 3 or 4, and the support goes down, and everything goes away. And so they actually inhibit the innovation in the industry that we need. Exactly.
So I think not only for our state association, but also on our dealer advisory boards, we need to be much more vocal and showing the OEMs the value of what we can bring to the table if they give us more choice. But we have to be educating them on the value, because they're not going to do it just because we brought them an idea. The other thing, when we can't control that, and I've got a couple members of our marketing team sitting here, what they've got to figure out is there was a moment where, for example, for a website, we chose one provider. We happened to be the only one that was available for all the 18 OEMs we represent. But it was not our best choice, right? So we've got to make sure that we're selecting the best choice out of the ones they give us. But we've got to say, what is the experience we want to give to our consumers? And even if we have to use 4 different digital retailing tools for our 18 OEMs, we still have to say, this is the experience we want with CMA, and how do we go to those 4 OEMs, or excuse me, the 4 vendors that we have to use that our OEMs have dictated, and still help them fit and match what we expect our customers to see. It's not perfect. It would be much better if we could just use one, but until we can figure that out, we still have to keep our expectations high and have what we think is the best process for our customers.
I think in some cases, if you form true, partnerships, like, you mentioned that there, that, we want to form true partnerships with vendors. We oftentimes don't recognize that we have the ability to help those vendor partners get things done with the manufacturers.
Yes.
And we need to take advantage of that.
So it's interesting, I've been in the industry now for 23 years, and it seems like at one point there was a lot of dealer choice. The pendulum swung towards dealer choice. I think what I'm hearing from you is maybe the pendulum swinging the other way, away from dealer choice. Where does the dust eventually settle here? I mean, will we literally go to like an OEM dictating thou shalt use this one solution? Because that doesn't seem, for all these reasons that you've articulated, the right path. How does it play out?
It may not be the right path, but there's a reason why, just to call it a vendor, but no relation one way or another. But tacking on, there's a reason why all the OEMs invested money in it. They're not doing it because they love the product. They're doing it because they want to say how the product's going to run. And to me, that's the difference, right? I personally don't want an EMS that the OEM has a financial stake in. Simply because I think it's a conflict of interest. And, to me, there needs to be a separation between the retailer and the OEM. Over time, it's clear that those lines are going to get very, very blurred.
Well, to some extent, it's happened already. I mean, one of our OEMs has been pressuring us to go onto their website package. It's the same website that we currently have, but we're being hacked and ripped out. So the question is, where's the money going?
Okay, great. So let me circle back. You mentioned the agency model. As I showed you a few slides, we're seeing very aggressive moves overseas. How do you see this all playing out? Is it something that people should be worried about, or is it sort of like this is going to blow over and people should be paying attention?
I think it's the most important question that we should be talking about here at NADA the next 3 days. The question of why do the OEMs want to go down that path now? We know that they've always wanted control of the customer experience. They want the customer data, and they would like more of the profits that they see on the retailer's financial statements to go on to theirs. And I don't fault them for that, because we all want the same thing. We want control of the customer, a better experience, and more profits on our financial statements, right? But when we look at the agency model, the reason I believe that it's popping up more right now is the last couple of years as we've been placing orders for cars, there hasn't been a floor plan expense. We haven't had a lot of negative equity. We've had good down payments and cash. The agency model becomes very attractive. When I mentioned earlier that we've got to creating solutions today for the problems of tomorrow, the agency model doesn't work as smoothly when all of a sudden consumers, their credit has gone down. And Bill and I talked a little bit about what Lithia has experienced, but when there's not perfect credit, when there's negative equity, when there's other situations, the retailers in this room, what we bring to the table are the creative solutions to help solve customers' transportation problems. It's not just about putting cars on the road. We are very creative. That's what we bring to the table. And honestly, we need the OEMs. They are the best at researching, producing, distributing great vehicles. And what we do best, so they put the mechanics in the business, and we put the soul in the business and the heart, and we bring the people into the showroom and help solve their problems. So we got to put our educator hats on, and we should absolutely be concerned about the agency model. It is, Bill said it's just 1,000 cuts. If they start with one little thing, it goes deeper. But we need to be a part of this conversation and educating our manufacturers on what we bring to the table. We can talk more about education later.
Yeah, there is a part of me that says, on the agency side of the equation, I can allow it's a function of order taking, as you mentioned earlier, but I don't think the data is very far from us. We're going to get back into an overproduction environment. And the OEM is going to look at us in terms of where these cars are going to go.
I think we are heading towards some version. How far down that road we get, I don't know. When people say, "Oh, franchise laws are going to protect us," but if you you think about the power that the OEM has over marketing and how they price cars and how they compensate dealers, they can make you wish for an agency model. They can make it so painful that you're going, please, I'd love to be an agent, stop the pain. And so I do think, we're going to get there. Now, I think, I look at, from Lithia's standpoint, right, from a big retailer, 300 stores nationwide, across Canada, we probably have a lot less fear over an agency model, right? Because we have scale. I think an agency model definitely benefits the larger players. But as also a small dealer in New Hampshire, it scares me a lot, So I think it's that bifurcation is really scary. That the agency model can be good for some. I think it can be really, really bad for others. I think it's going to bring a whole new host of issues over the next few years. But, it's clear that the current model is under siege. And it's not going to stop. And part of it is, it's all economics, right? The OEMs are not making the money that they were making in nice engines. The amount of investments they're making are massive. And they look at the amount of money that dealers have made over the last 2 years, and they just said it's lost profit. And so they don't want to invest in facilities, but they live in a fantasy world right now, right? Where, we're only going to have a 7-day supply of cars, so we can carry the cars ourselves, and we wouldn't have a huge interest expense. So we can manage that. But if you add all our floor plans up, just in this room, do you know what that would do to an OEM balance sheet if they had to carry all that inventory? And that's today. Now go back to 60 days supply on the ground. It would blow up their balance sheets. So I think that's the one thing that may stave it off is if we go back to oversupply.
The two things that come to mind there, some of the attraction for the agency model for the manufacturers are, in my opinion, really nailed it. One of them is the cost it takes for them to sort of distribute and retail vehicles. And I wonder, I don't have any solutions necessarily, but I wonder where the dealer can contribute to that conversation, the dealer network can contribute to that conversation. I think that it's very easy for the manufacturer to get involved in how we execute processes, but I think in our dealer council or advisory boards or in our interactions with the manufacturer, we really do need to ask the questions of what they're trying to solve. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to take $500 out of the distribution costs? And dealers are incredibly smart people. I mean, they're just. I mean, this body of peers that we have is really remarkable. They're resilient and creative, and they're entrepreneurs. And the manufacturers foreclose on the power that they have, the talent that they have to try and solve some of their own problems. And I think it's a real shame.
Michael, you talk about people in our dealerships that are solving those problems. The reason we need to fight against the agency model, the owners and the dealers are going to be fine. We'll be fine. We'll adjust. But the people who the stories that we hear every day in our industry, someone who started as a receptionist or a sales associate, grew their way up, maybe has a high school education, and has created an incredible life to support their loved ones through our industry, those are the people that will be hurt the most if we become a group of hourly associates delivering cars.
I love most about this business is because we have the opportunity to impact people's lives, and literally, not figuratively, we have the ability to impact people's kids' lives. It's multi-generational. It's the best part about this business.
All right, so let's start taking questions from the audience. I think I have 27 already, so I'll try to filter through these and prioritize. Good question from the audience. Sorry that I don't know all the names of people who are texting me. Send me your name if you don't mind as well. Do you honestly see any new revenue opportunities outside of traditional profit centers? What are you exploring?
One of the items that we're looking at is insurance to our customers. We've actually partnered with a local insurance agency that actually has a national footprint, and we're in the process right now of putting mechanisms in place to be able to offer insurance to all of our customers. We're very early in the stages. We're looking to monetize our customer base in other ways that we haven't before.
Steve, I think this whole connected car and software possibilities, we're already having conversations on Honda's national board with Honda because they're seeing the opportunities. We don't know what it is yet. They don't even know. But we're talking about, okay, what happens when a car, an EV comes off the lease? Can we reclaim the car? Can we add features, shut off features to make EX and EXL? Can we do these things and where there are revenue opportunities down the road that the cars, out there and the customer turns on? We didn't see these as a recurring revenue stream. And those are conversations we have to start having now. And then we're like, okay, we have a seat at the table, we need a seat at the table, and we need a piece of the pie.
I think there's also space around charging and home charging infrastructure, around battery recycling and second life. I think there's some interesting things even out on the expo hall floor right now that all of us will be looking into for other revenue opportunities. I know a lot of dealers in this room have gotten into insurance, into car wash, into body business, but I think there's even more creativity to it as we think about what EVs or other alternative fuel vehicles might be in the future that is not normal service business. And everybody in this room is pretty darn creative. I have no doubt we'll have, even 2 years from now, more opportunities for discussing.
Yeah, I think there's a market there on the EV space, because I think that the traditional independent, traditionally, internal combustion engine mom and pop repair facility that's in your neighborhood is going to have a very, very difficult time capitalizing what it's going to take to repair the electric vehicles. And I think that the dealers could actually fill that well. That there's still going to be a segment of the market that is going to look for a value opportunity to repair electric vehicles, and not only can we own the dealer side of that, but we could potentially own the independent side of that, if that makes sense.
I think it's the other side of, sort of on-demand retail or digital retail is on-demand service, right? Whether it's mobile service, I expect that to explode over the next few years, where, if our customers are expecting convenience to be able to buy a car whenever, wherever they want, they're going to want the same experience and service. I think there'll be a premium pricing for it, right? But I do think that there's going to be a very good
We already see it. We've been offering valet service, pickup and drop off, some at-home service. You can't supply the need that's out there.
And you're able to achieve a premium for that.
Yes.
But we may need to create different price points and different expense structures to serve different segments of the EV repair market as well. I'm saying there's a Ritz-Carlton price point and there's a Sheraton price point. There's a Courtyard Marriott price point. I'm not picking on the Marriott, but I think that we can actually fill multiple price points where we're typically accustomed to only filling one segment of the repair market. I think there's an opportunity there in the EV space that dealers could really capture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the things we mentioned that we're looking at is how do we go deeper into the service pool out there? And one of the things that we're looking at is how do we create a different pricing model, a different cost structure on our end to profitably serve those segments.
That's great. So I'm still catching up. So there were a number of questions with facility upgrades. So if you still have that question that didn't get answered, bump that up on my cell phone if you don't mind. Michael, question for you. Don't leave us hanging. Which CRM did you switch to?
We
can answer or not answer.
Yeah, we're big fans of DriveCentric. We like those guys a lot. We think they're creative. We think that they're very responsive. When we had to build some custom integrations, we looked at them for 3 years in a row. We think they do a great job. They got a great tool.
We're big fans of DriveCentric as well. Very easy to use from an end user standpoint.
Okay, so I'm going to bookend this with questions for you, Liza, but bookend it with also your experience, Bill, at Lithia. But we'll start with Liza, if you don't mind. As a consolidator, do you use an all or none strategy for your group when evaluating vendors? Or do you allow individual stores to choose the best fit from the operator's perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly something that we've been challenged with as we've grown, especially as we acquire a group who already has strong vendor relationships that they don't want to change. We do believe there's significant efficiencies of having consistent vendors across the group. We have been thoughtful about at what level do we force change, or or allow the GMs to see the benefit of change. For the most part, things like DMS, CRM, finance partners, those are all consistent across. I think we have to, if we want the benefit of being a large group, we have to have the efficiencies of scale and be able to negotiate stronger vendor contracts. When it comes down to the small things that I think are market specific, for example, one of our markets might do better with Auto Trader and another is on Cars.com and Car Gurus, or those sorts of things, we have a lot more flexibility. So it's not a one size fits all. We try to balance what makes sense from an enterprise perspective that is going to, we need to scale, and then what are the things that are more specific per market that the GMs need to have buy-in and decision-making ability.
And then what about Lithia's strategy?
So I think the strategy is very much along what Liza was saying. You know, in Lithia, the GM really does have control over the store. But, you know, there are parameters, you know, meaning that we know which vendors are the best and which ones have met our metrics. And so, you know, we have teams of people that are constantly benchmarking our dealers and our vendors and saying, you know what, over 300 dealers, these are the top 5. And very rarely do you have a mandate, you have to use this vendor, you get generally a choice, and there's data backing up why.
Good question here. We'll see how people deal with this one. So, where do you see opportunity to strip costs out of the process to sell a car while consumer expectations are becoming more demanding?
On the walk over here, we were talking about the one-person sales model and how that impacts both the customer experience and the cost to sell a car. And so that's one of the things, we're just piloting it in one market so that we have A/B data and understand, does it really bring down the cost to sell a car and how does it impact the experience? So that's just one of the things that we're focused on.
F&I is an opportunity, you know, for those football fans, I refer to the F&I department, the wide receivers for the dealership. They get high premiums and they're very, very high maintenance. I do think there's an opportunity there. But I do think there's an opportunity there because they do generate a tremendous amount of revenue for the dealerships, but they also take a tremendous cut. And sometimes I wonder when I look at some of the HC people that have been very successful with it, you know, they're probably not going to do that.
And I probably wasn't clear when I said the one-person sales model, that was probably what we were leading to. I think that F&I lifer isn't a part of our future. It's a more of a growth step along the way.
And I think some of that's going to change as the banks get more algorithmic in the way they're buying. You don't need that finance director who's got 30 years of experience to rehash a deal. There's going to be nothing to rehash. You're going to get one call, it's going to be the best call, and that's it. So that's going to take, I think, some complexity out of the system. And, you know, as far as the selling, it's selling F&I that hard. You know, now already with things like, you know, with CDK, with digital deal check, everything, we have everything queued up for an F&I manager. The system tells us what forms to print. Everything's pre-populated. It's not that hard anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at total variable compensation, you can reduce that by 5 to 7 points. I mean, that's the math. And we have to find a way to do it with less people, less tools, and you know, gross compression is here. It's not coming. It's already here in most markets, I would say. I think that's a big piece. I think really looking at the service side of it as well, and asking ourselves, how many people does it truly take to execute a service experience for a guest? You know, I'm exploring a single point of contact model on the service side as well. I don't know how that'll go, but I think those are the, like, take everything you know and sort of toss it upside down and look at it differently. I think that's where we need to be.
You know, with that point, I mean, I think the evolution of the service business in the last couple of years with video MPI. If the tech is capable of doing the video MPI, are they capable of actually selling to close out the customer and finish that?
But we told ourselves that a salesperson couldn't sell finance products for 30 years, and we proved that. That's not necessarily true. And we told ourselves that none of our techs could communicate with human beings, and I don't know if that's true either. So I think it's a very valid question.
Well, you know, along the lines in terms of increasing productivity of our services managers, right? Because that's what really amounts to, right? How do we drive the productivity of our people? There's a lot of good technology out there that we're currently using in our dealerships today that we're not leveraging. You know, one of the things that drives me up the wall, I'm sure there's a few people here in the room that have the same issue. We've all invested in this hunter equipment. Customer rolls over, tells them they need tires, tells them it needs an alignment. How often is that communication, or how often is that conversation made with the service advisor? Why can't I incorporate technology with either Hunter or my DMS to automatically send a text? We know that it failed. We know who the customer is. We know they're the dealership that can deliver them to them right now.
So Michael, you used the term earlier, automation. What can you share about what you're excited about exploring in terms of automation? And what do you mean by that term?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that fascinate me that really pique my curiosity. One is, we have a very fractured title system in this country that causes all of us a tremendous amount of headache. I'm very interested in talking. There are a couple of new vendors in the space that are involved in blockchain technology around titling. If there was ever anything that should use the blockchain system, it's vehicle titling, frankly. So I'm interested in things like that because I think we can reduce the complexity and the cost. And actually, I think it's a win-win solution for not only for consumers, for retailers, and for the states. I don't think they like being in the title business either. So I'm interested in things like that. I'm interested in looking at non-automotive enterprise solutions that help us manage how we take care of our people and train our people and communicate with our people. I'm interested in things like that. And those are two examples. Yeah.
So let me, while we're on that, Liza, you had mentioned, back to the basics. Bill, you had mentioned human capital management. Maybe my words are not yours, but what are you looking to accomplish in those areas? You want to help your employees, help them bridge to different skill sets, etc. What excites you? What technology are you looking to evolve into? And from a human capital management standpoint.
We're starting a pilot program with Honda next week on a service mentor-mentee program. The software is piloted and developed by ASA, where you can start a tech. What happens when we start a new tech these days? Right? We make a couple of videos, we throw them in the line, we eat an engine. This is a really strong system over a couple of months where the mentee gets his list of tasks. The mentor can track the progress. We can see how the technician is progressing. We can make sure they're getting the right training. I think they get gamification of that. Oh, you just read to this level, you did that. I think those are the things we need to figure out. How do we get the right training to the right people quickly? And I think the other side is spending a lot more time with our people, understanding where their strengths, where their weaknesses, how do we spend time in capital development and human resource development so that we can make our people better, because we all know it's getting harder and harder to find people, so that we need to make up for maybe their challenges, their weaknesses, to make them stronger employees.
Okay. Thank you for the quality of these questions. They keep coming fast and furious here. With capital markets down, what are good ways to mitigate fraud and risk? Specifically, with validated income and any other good advice to reduce fraud? It's pretty tactical, but maybe a good question for this audience.
I'm really curious to hear someone's answer. So much hard.
The question that I always get asked as well, so I'll punt this to you. What's the panel's outlook for when new car inventory returns to 2019 levels?
I hope never.
But are you getting a sense of guidance from any of the OEMs at this point, or are they just hushed?
I think it varies by brand.
Yeah, it's very different per brand.
Yeah, by brand, and even specific model lines within brands. Everybody's got a crystal ball. I don't know if mine's any better than yours.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of us have run across the issue where we think the cars are coming and our OE runs into yet another unforeseen problem. And I think all of us thought by now we'd be past this, but we're not. So I really don't know when we get back to 2019 levels.
I think one of our challenges this year is the consumers have somewhat gotten conditioned the last couple of years to know that there's no inventory and that they're ordering cars. But now there's significant confusion out there because they're hearing from the Chevy dealer that it's $10,000 off a Silverado, and we've got a ton of trucks, and they're hearing from the Toyota dealer that we don't have any trucks, and so we need to we're gonna have to do a better job educating our consumers this year that it is different per brand and per model, and why Honda doesn't have any incentives and Chevy's got significant incentives. So actually our job is gonna get more difficult around sharing that story with the consumers because it is going to be vastly different, I think, in 2023 per franchise.
Great. Charging infrastructure inside your service bays. So this person's question, I don't know if this was, putting charging stations in bays will tie up those bays, potentially causing efficiency problems down the road. How are you thinking about this, or are you really giving much thought to putting chargers inside the service bays yet?
One of the things that, and this was a little bit trial and error, but we did get approval from one OEM, and now we're moving to the rest of actually we got approval with Stellantis to have mobile charging stations in our service department. So it's actually built onto a unit, and we can move it to the bay that we need it. That way we don't have to have dedicated bays, and we don't have to tie up a bay, as you said. So we've got to keep finding out how we can have more flexibility around charging infrastructure. The other piece is when the consultants come out and tell us where we have to put them on our lots, we need to be challenging that because they 90% of the time are not correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of our other OEs have come up with similar solutions.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to evolve here, and we're hoping that some good technological improvements occur quickly to give us other options.
It's changing so fast. I mean, I think the one thing we need to try to do is future-proof. I mean, you're not going to need less charging stations 2 years from now than you need today. I think that I take as an absolute. And so when we're designing facilities, we're piping conduit all over the place. We're making sure that we've considered the size of the transformer and the electrical infrastructure of the building, to be sort of prepared for it. There's some fascinating new startup technology out there, and I think build the infrastructure to assume that you're going to need a lot of charging stations, but don't buy all the charging stations because the one you buy today is going to be outdated. It's like flat screen TVs. Yeah, they're like flat screen TVs.
It's like Ohm's law, right? The processing power doubles. It's going to be the same thing with the chargers. So they're going to get more and more efficient, more and more powerful. And so, I think using a degree of caution right now is build the conduit, build the pipes, be ready, but oversize the transformers as much as you can. But understand that what you're buying today probably won't be the cutting edge 2 years from now.
And one of the issues that we're having in some of our OEs right now in terms of the number of chargers they want and the time frames that they want them in, it's not consistent with when the vehicles are going to arrive and when they come in volume. So, we're looking at the investment required today to meet the requirements that are probably not going to be, we're not going to probably be able to leverage until well into the future. So we're trying to put as much of the brakes on that as possible. But to your point, making sure that we have all the nuts and bolts and hardware in place that we're going to move.
We also didn't realize that we need somebody on staff who truly understands the ins and outs of charging infrastructure. I had no idea the knowledge I would have today around, and I wouldn't even use the right language, but the size of the pipe and the fact that you can squeeze it down at certain times of the day, open it up, the relationships we have to have with our electrical companies and energy companies. That's a whole different side of the business that all of us now have to have in our wheelhouse on top of our normal duties. But we can make much better decisions the more knowledge we have around our future energy needs.
And I think that there's been there are a lot of different companies in that space that are making chargers, and not all of them are going to make it. I would be really careful with who you pick to work with on that stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so question from Paul Bavitas. What are the 2 or 3 things you are training your managers and leaders to make them better business people?
Developing their staff and associates. It's probably the most, we're in a war for talent. And I think all of us as a we have, hiring good people. A lot of times the people that we have in staff are the best ones we should have. Hiring from the outside is an unknown, and making our people be better each and every day, and retaining them just a little bit more than what our competitors can do. That truly starts to pay dividends down the road for the entire organization.
I think, one of the things we really focus on with sort of my management teams at the stores is making sure that when we come out of, we have our weekly meeting and our staff meetings, to get back to the people that work for them, to understand that we had a meeting, this is what we covered, we raised these 3 issues that you brought up to us, here's our resolution, so that people understand we're not just going to a room and drinking beer, right? We're going to a room, we're taking their real concerns and their real issues, we're hearing them, and then we're coming out with real solutions. And, you know, I really encourage our managers to bring employee challenges and issues to us in those meetings, because I think the more problems they raise, we can find out at the spot where there's a real problem, but the more that we can fix them and streamline them, the more the employees feel like they have a voice and the happier the employees.
Teaching our managers emotional intelligence. It used to be they just had to train their teams on how to sell and service cars, but now they need to be life coaches. And one of the other big focus areas is we have a lot of people who have made a significant amount of money the last couple of years, and so we now need to become financial counselors and help them readjust to what the future is going to look like. And really, their leader and their manager needs to be able to give them the resources and the support to make better decisions going forward.
So Liza, earlier you had mentioned an apprentice technician program. Bill, you had mentioned mentoring. This question is, our dealerships are only as good as our people. How do we frame an auto career to attract the next generation into the auto business?
I think you tell the success stories. I think there's, you know, we have, you know, I have a guy that worked for us that he was selling shoes at a Foot Locker out of college. And he's, you know, he's making mid-6 figures running one of the most successful stores for that franchise. He's married, he's got 2 beautiful kids. Like, he never dreamed that was possible. I think you got to tell that story.
You know, I think on the tech side, you know, you've got to reach the audience really early. One of the things that we're blessed at Lithia is a great recruiting department. And I'm probably doing a meeting or at a VOTEC or on a Zoom call with a different school all the time to try to, you know, be the employer of choice for these kids. You know, we're actually in the process of building our own tech academy in New Jersey right now. You know, we're going into some underprivileged areas. We work in Elizabeth and going to the high schools, and we're recruiting out of there, and we're providing a co-op program. I think part of the issue is if you look at the path that some of the OEMs have laid out for their factory training programs, you know, they go through a, you know, a 2-year college degree program. And for most kids, it's not realistic, nor do they need it to be a technician. And so I think, you know, offering things like co-op employment where, you know, they can be in school part-time and they're working. You know, a lot of kids would rather be learning to be a tech than being a FedEx driver or a, you know, Amazon or Uber Eats driver, but they can't afford to go to school full-time, right? So how do we find ways to invest in these kids early on and say, okay, you know, you're going to work for me, you know, 4 hours a day, you go to school the rest, and we're going to pay you more than we probably should, because when you graduate, we want you.
I fully agree with what both of you all said, and I'll add to that. For our apprentice technician program, we have a full-time person who all she does is she is out there sharing the story in automotive technical schools, high schools, middle schools. Anytime we don't have school on the day, we have recently she's been having Boys and Girls Club groups come shadow for the day. But the 2 other pieces I'll add, one, having parent nights in our school, because it's not only educating them young, it's educating their parents on what a great career path this will be. That's made a significant difference. And then sharing the stories. You know, one of our videographers, I think we have 50 different I wouldn't even call them testimonials, but associate stories, all with different backgrounds and different ways they came into business. Sharing it through video and being able to get them in the hands of people who aren't looking for that career in automotive.
Great. A question from Matthew Bacon. Thank you, Matthew. So, Liza, this is to you. You mentioned an EV charger that is mobile. Matthew wants to know, is that a proven concept somewhere or just pre-production?
No, we got them in our CBJR store right now. I'd be happy to share it with you. Yeah.
Great. Keep the questions coming. I've got 44 right now that I still need to filter through. Well, let me go to fixed ops. So we've talked a lot about fixed ops. Is there anything specific that you're doing with parts and service it's evolving, you're excited about it's evolving your operations?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is we're actively trying to expand capacity across our organization. Most recently at our Hyundai store, we actually went to 24-hour service. We were a little skeptical on whether we'd be able to fill up the store, but we opened things up, and lo and behold, the people came. People are dropping off their cars in the evening, they're getting into a loaner at night, they're coming in the morning and picking it up, and we frankly have been amazed at the demand that there is for service beyond the traditional hours out there.
We're not 24 hours, but when we acquired the store and found out they were open at 6 a.m. on Saturdays, I was thinking, really? Who comes in at 6 a.m.? There's a line out the door every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. So some of the techs get to get out a little bit earlier because they're starting earlier, but we haven't found the technicians that want to work 24 hours yet, but I'll be curious to find who they are.
Make an adjustment in pay grade, they come right out of the woodwork. So
Amazing how that works.
One of the surprises is that we've actually been able to turn our used cars a little bit more quickly.
Yeah.
At nighttime, we're working on used cars in addition to other customer pay work, and we're getting cars that are traded in on a Friday and are available for sale on a Saturday. It's wonderful.
So,
I was just gonna say, we're like many others at this point, we built that internal, apprenticeship program, but equally, I think it's important is creating a lot of predictability around what it takes to move from one level to another in the technician ranks. I just don't think we were as transparent or communicated that as effectively as we could have in the past. And so, the technicians want to make more money too, right? And being really, really specific in prescribing, like, you're going to start at this level and it pays this, with a productivity bonus, based on how you perform. And this is exactly what you need to do to sort of move to the next level. And it's not it's a meritocracy. It's not about how long you've been here. It's about how much you can do. I think being really, really transparent about that has helped us retain a lot of our technicians.
And I think at that point, we've made a really, really big deal in our shops is when someone goes from a C to a B or a B to an A, we stop the shop, we have a big meeting, we announce, tell them why this person, went from a C to a B, what did they accomplish, what skill sets did they acquire they needed to get there, to make it very simple that, okay, if I do this, this, and this, it's not because the service manager likes me that he's going to move me up a class. These are things I need to become a B Tech or an A Tech. And I think sometimes a lot of technicians feel there's no path forward, but I think if you define the path for them, it definitely works.
So the next question, I watched the eyebrow raises up here, is around augmented reality, virtual reality, and the metaverse. So I'm a big doubter myself in some cases, but I was at CES 2 weeks ago, and I saw some interesting technology where a technician working on changing a brake rotor is going to be able to see an overlay of how it should be done to give them an indication of shortcuts, right? So are you seeing anything in particular? It's okay if you say no. The question is, what are your thoughts on the VR metaverse for virtual showrooms, virtual test drives, and or using this technology to train technicians? Any thoughts?
I think on the repair side, on the technician side, I do think there are a number of different really interesting use cases there, whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality for training. I'm pretty skeptical on the virtual test drives, and I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical on the rest of it. I see really good use cases on the technical side. I do not see very good use cases on the sales side.
We have not gone down that path, but one of the best things that I saw lately, we were at Boys and Girls Club's career day, and the kids got to put on virtual reality glasses and learn how to change oil and change a tire. And out of all the careers that they were shown that day, they got to go take blood out of someone, all this on VR. Changing oil was the favorite of the day. So I thought that was pretty exciting and a cool way to show them our business.
Question, does the panel see value in a finance hub to maximize efficiency across dealer groups?
We have actually given that some thought. With 8 or 9 stores, you can imagine the number of deals that don't get delivered each and every day. just having a finance them to potentially look through deals that weren't delivered, see if they can talk to a different bank, see something that they made that the other finance person may not have seen. Yeah, we see value in that. We also see value in the finance hub in terms of following up with customers that after the sale that didn't buy a product after 5, 10, or 30 days, such as an extended warranty.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are a lot more dealers with scale than there used to be, and you know, we should all be leveraging our buying power to, you know, to maximize reserves and flats and things like that. So I think that when you have some centralized function that's able to reduce the number of lenders that you interact with and maximize your opportunities there, then I think there's definitely I think you're leaving some on the table if you're not.
I think it plays into what I see as the future of retail in the next, let's say, 5 to 7 years, which is, you know, I think we'll have those diehards who just want to do everything in person, and I think they'll have those front runners who want to do everything online. But I think over time, the vast majority of customers are going to a hybrid model, right? They'll probably want to come in, test drive the car, maybe make the deal, but they don't need to wait around for finance. They don't need to wait around for the car to be cleaned, right? Why not send them home and then make an appointment and then do the finance online and have the car delivered? I think a finance hub and things like that start becoming a lot more viable when we start doing, you know, sort of after the deal F&I and after the deal delivery, and then also doing follow-up for things like service contracts and maintenance plans. You know, we were working with a vendor who said, you know, they do some SEM for us for service, and they said we have the ability to offer maintenance plans in our emails, and it's an eastward. It's $500 a month. I don't really know if that's really going to make sense. We sold 9 maintenance plans online fully the first month we had the program. I'm shocked at customers who didn't buy a maintenance plan up front, just an email being offered a maintenance plan. How many said yes?
Second bite of it. We've had some success leveraging our finance teams between stores. You know, we have several of our brands that have 2 different points, and we've had modest success in terms of using a finance store at one store to work finance at another store when they're fairly busy, just via Zoom. And the PRU has been about the same, in some cases higher, and it's really leveraging the downtime of our finance people across stores.
Last your thoughts. You're consolidating, sorry.
Yeah, I think 2 things. One, on the lender consolidation, that's an area that we're very focused on. We saw that we had like 43 lenders across there. We're like, this is crazy. And every GM wants to add, the lender that can get you that one deal done. Obviously, that wasn't what was best overall for the company, so we've targeted bringing that down and also having conversations with those lenders as how can we have our own direct buyer, how much more can they give us from the depth of purchase if we're giving them volume. And I think as we're all consolidating, the larger groups are going to be able to take advantage of that finance power at a different level. And then we've also done some things where we do like to buy stores in a campus setting, 3 to 5 stores in a market, so that we can take advantage of having F&I managers. Maybe it's 2 fewer because we've got 5 stores and people can move around. We've started doing that a little bit, and I expect we'll do that even further in 23 as we're trying to look at that cost per vehicle sold.
I always love to hear differing viewpoints on this question. What do you think will be the long-term effects on dealers that still charge market adjustments far over sticker on new vehicles? Good answer.
I think the market's going to reset. The market's going to reset. There's always going to be a premium that some people can command on certain products. The G-Wagon is the one that always, sort of jumps out because it's perpetually been that way. As an organization, we're going to price to market. That's how we operate, and we want to sort of take what the market will bear. But I think that those days are coming to an end, except for some select models.
I think you have to, have some sensitivity to your customer. I don't believe in adjusted market value. I just think it's a bad practice. That's not to say we won't put a tremendous amount of accessories on a vehicle, right? We could put, on a Type R, I might put, $3,000, $4,000 of accessories on the car that we're gonna get $10,000 for. But I don't believe in marking up to sell air. I just don't think it's a good business practice. There's plenty of gross to be made, putting product on the car that the customer, maybe they don't want it, right? If they had to get it themselves and they pick out their, G-Wagon or Type R, they wouldn't wanna have running boards or this or that. But at least they can say, all right, at least I got something for that markup, as opposed to, just, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, because that's what we want.
We made the decision not to put any addendums or market adjustments really early on when this started, and I didn't second guess my decision, but I was worried. I said, are we leaving a lot of dollars on the table that our competitors are getting, and they're going to have this money to invest when times get tougher and we wouldn't have it? And I don't know the exact data point, but it did make me feel better when at the Toyota dealer meeting they shared the data that showed that the dealers who had not gone above MSRP had a significantly higher increase in profits over the last 2.5 years versus the ones who had done market adjustments. That made me feel a little bit better. But the problem is whether we did the market adjustment or not, we're all going to be dealing with the blowback on that as these consumers come in with significant negative equity. So consumers tend to lump us all together, and whether we charged it or not, I think we're still going to be the bad guy in some situations, unfortunately.
So one last question before we start to wrap questions. I think it's a good question. What should dealers have learned from this Carvana experiment? It's easy to throw arrows in their backs, but what should we have learned collectively from the Carvana side?
I mean, I can tell you that, we're dealing with some of that right now in our driveway product, right, where we're selling, almost 1,500 plus cars a month nationwide, fully online. It's dangerous to be a pioneer. You're going to get hit with a lot of arrows. I think arrogance kills. I think they were incredibly arrogant. I think they thought they knew everything. Just because you're a disruptor doesn't necessarily mean that the rules don't apply. And I think that they've run into some real problems with DMV, with a lot of things that as dealers we look at and go, you can't do that. That just doesn't make sense. But they didn't. They thought they'd just pull their way past it. And the one thing I think that I've taken away is that the government's a lot more powerful than you are, and if they shut you down, they shut you down. They pull your license. There's nothing you're going to do. I think Carvana definitely opened everyone's eyes to possibilities, which I think is great. I actually think the one thing that they thought was going to be great for them, the pandemic, was actually horrible for them because it forced all of us to adapt really, really quickly, probably much quicker than we would have otherwise. I think, but for the pandemic, I think we'd probably be sitting here with Carvana being a lot more successful. But I think that, we had to accelerate our pace of change, and I think that in some ways doomed them. And I also think one other lesson is, they forgot to keep the main thing, purchasing, auctions. I'm not sure they really thought through their business plan, and they really just try to be all things to all people really, really quickly.
I don't think they're dead. I don't think it's over. I think that the family has a lot of money to take that thing private or find an exit. I don't think it's dead.
And I don't think any of us should be cheering or making fun of the fact that they didn't make it, because any of us could be at that point. Our franchise system could be at that point. And so we need to be learning from what they did well and thanking them for having entered our used car business, because I agree with you, Bill. It opened our eyes to, yes, we can appraise cars without having to see it in person. Of course we can. We just weren't going to do it till someone forced our hand to make us do it. So I think we should all be grateful they came to our industry. They may not be done yet, and we don't want to be in their seat one day.
All right, good. So they drive towards wrapping here. Wave your magic wand, and then can you envision a technology product that you want that doesn't yet exist, and what would it be?
I want somebody to figure out the blockchain for titling. I think that's a real thing. I think it's going to be really, really hard because you have to deal with 50 states and 20,000 counties. But I really think there's a huge market there.
Right.
If I could wave my magic wand, I'd like the people to have a a tool or an application that can help manage our communications with our customers. Today, we're texting and emailing on a variety of tools. Customers are responding back, don't do this, don't do that, I want to be communicated like this. But we can't leverage those communications across those platforms.
It would just be one tool. Right, I mean, that's the truth. It would be one tool that does everything that 4 million tools we have do today. It's so fragmented and it's unnecessary. I just open my laptop, I look how many icons I have on my desktop and how many, saved pages I have for different accesses, and it's insane. I don't know another business that runs on as many applications as we do. And so for me, it's who's going to be the guy that has one solution that does it all?
Bill, my answer was going to be pretty similar. I was going to say one dashboard. My dad always jokes, he said, Liza, 40 years ago, I didn't have any of the technology you all have, but I knew more about where my business was on Monday morning and how many cars we sold, how much gross we had, how much labor sales, and you take you all day to figure that out. We need one dashboard. As a leader, we should be able to look enterprise. We need more of our tools to have a stronger enterprise solution.
So I will say, from a Lithia standpoint, if I had to say one thing I think would be better than anybody, is our enterprise level reporting is phenomenal. We were able to slice and dice in a million ways. We can see every store, compare any store to any other store. Everything is mapped out well. And, it makes bringing on a new store much easier. I think as you consolidate, I think it's very, very hard, right, to bring someone a different DMS on. I think there's a lot of challenges without that enterprise level reporting, but it definitely takes a lot of software engineering to make it happen.
So any parting words of wisdom for the folks in the audience, and or anything in particular that you'd like to see in terms of ways the industry evolves?
The most important thing that we can do is make sure that every associate in our dealerships understands how much what they do matters, and that our industry is the most important one in this country that helps people get where they want to go in life. They've got to have safe, reliable transportation with a budget they can afford and a vehicle that meets their family needs. And people should be super proud to be a part of the auto industry. And we need to, as leaders, connect the dots for them so that they leave every day understanding what they're doing in our dealerships matter, and they're out there sharing that story. Because we've got to be educators to our OEMs, to our consumers, to our communities about why the franchise system is the most efficient and strongest way for people to purchase and service transportation, not just cars, but transportation in the future.
I'll take a shot at it. For all of us that are here at NADA, a lot of us have already made very substantial investments in our people, process, technology, our dealerships, etc. There's a lot of 20, 50s, and $100 bills that are just laying around our store. And if we just simply leverage and make each little process, each little piece of software that we've already invested in, and our people investing a little bit more in them just to make everybody a little bit better, it pays huge dividends down the road.
For me, it would be, we need more people involved at the OEM level. On my second term as Honda's national chairman, and it's the same 10 guys, and we need more people, more voices. They can't just hear it from the same people over and over and over again. We need more diverse people on the boards. We need younger people on the boards. We just need people talking to their counterparts and letting them know that, everyone's kind of thinking the same way about a lot of these issues we talked about today, but they can't hear it from the same 7 or 8 people.
Mine's gonna sound a lot like Liza's. I think everybody in this room at some point, somebody gave them an opportunity that maybe they were not ready for. It may have been a family member that gave you that opportunity, but find that person to give that opportunity to, so we can keep doing what we're doing.
So my favorite question, now that's the last. Tell me the car that got away. The one that you owned and you wish you still owned today, or you had a chance to buy that you never bought? You can tell the car guys from the not car guys.
All right, so everyone in my organization knows I am not a car person. I'm just not.
Okay, you still have a family.
I love the people side of our business. I am not the product person. I do own a 1982 Jeep Scrambler. that it was a gift, and I do love it. But it didn't get away. It's still in my garage, and it runs about half the time.
I drove an Audi, 2016 Audi TDI A7. Best car I ever had. Once the Dieselgate incident occurred, I traded in that and I got to receive a gasoline powered one and regretted it ever since.
The first car I bought myself was a 968 Cabriolet, and I moved into the city shortly thereafter, and my now ex-wife convinced me that I didn't need a car in the city anymore. I regret that to this day. That was one of my favorite cars.
I have a problem with old English sports cars. I had a 76 Triumph TR6 that I rebuilt, and I should have kept it.
If the audience wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you? Or would you prefer they don't?
They can connect me on my name on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any social media. And my email address is on our cmacars.com website. And I think my cell phone number is actually out there pretty easily too. So anyway.
LinkedIn is the best way for me.
Yeah, probably LinkedIn is probably the easiest.
Yep, same.
Okay, great round of applause.
See you tomorrow? Tomorrow, 12. Thanks so much. Yeah. Talk about that. More than subscription, whatever you can. Yeah. We'll have to I'm curious to see what's going on. Yeah. Be really proud. You did a nice job, but I was a little talking. That's all right. All right, so that takes us to the end of this session. There was a little issue with the program not wanting to shut itself off, but I hope you got a lot out of it. I'm not quite sure what the audio situation was online because some of the speakers did not come across so clearly, even in the room here. So I'm going to take a look at that and probably edit something where I'm able to adjust the audio level and clean it up a little bit. But thanks for watching. There's going to be more coverage of NADA as the event unfolds. We'll see you.